Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're back again. We're going to do another Ambassador. They're all pretty much the same in line, but sometimes folks tell me that they have a slight version of it and they want to see how that one's done. In this case, we're going to do the Ambassadeur 5-star. And this reel, I think, was probably early 2000s. And when I see a reel that I'm not certain what it's going to be exactly inside, I always go and pull the schematic. And we're in luck here. This one has got the schematic for the Ambassadeur 5-star. And it shows you the burst diagram, where the pieces and parts are. And if you have an issue with any of those, gives you part numbers where you can go and get those replacement parts. So this is available through Abu Garcia, actually, on their website. If you want to do an internet search, just put in Abu Ambassadeur schematic and it'll be the first one that comes up. And you can go look for the whole series of Ambassadors as well as other Abu reels and pull the schematics so that you have an internal look. So some of the internal gymnastics here, I like that schematic. Also like to wear a protective glove on my hand here to keep the reel oils and that off my hand when I go to repair these things. You never know quite sure what's going on inside that reel, so it always is helpful to protect yourself up front. I also use a parts tray, which you see behind me here. It's just the bottom of a jug. And that is always a good thing for me because from time to time I lose track of the parts that I put on and find that there's an extra one in there that shouldn't be on the reel at some point. And when that happens, I can quickly reverse course and go do it. There is an E-clip holding on the gear sleeve that you can't get the handle off unless you pull that E-clip, so that's just what I did now, and I had enough hand pressure to be able to take that off. Here's the reason it's called an E-clip. It's just basically a C with a little tag in the middle there. And this is where a parts tray is very helpful. I know other folks lay pieces and parts out in the sequence that they took them off on their workbench. That's fine if it works for you. For me, it's better to do it this way. I also recommend that you take pictures along the way. Those pictures will tell you the sequence that you took the reels off, pieces off the reel. And of course, when you go to reassemble, you're basically reversing that sequence. In my case, I have this video running, so if I ever have a doubt, I can go back and check over the course of the video where that piece came off and what the orientation was from time to time and so on. Taking this star adjuster off. Now, you don't have to do this piece. Well, I think you do. You have to take the star adjuster off and then you can pull the side plate. You don't have to take the other pieces off inside, which are tension washers. But regardless, I do that here. We have 3 side plate screws. I always work on this side plate before I go to the other side plate. Sometimes the work that needs to be done on the other side plate can be done by removing a spool. And if it can't, then you'll have to pull the 4 screws here. I do the gear side plate first. It's probably a force of habit, but I was mentioning in another video I did recently that if there's something broken or out of sorts on the gear side plate that makes the reel a lost cause, then you didn't spend any time doing the other side. Alright, there's 3 screws for the case. That should enable us to pull that out. Nope, we got to take the 2 screws off here. Okay, so those 2 screws go on the posts that have the springs that hold the jack and yoke assembly, which is the free spool release, and those have to come out. So I'm going to do that at this point. Those case screws are generally flared into the case, so you don't have to worry about them falling out. These small screws you do have to, and so I put them into the case. I just put them into my parts basket side by side just to make sure that they're the same length. Most of the time they are, but every now and then you get a surprise. Now we can remove that top piece. We can remove it if I took the screws out all the way. And I have a little something sticking there, so I'm going to assume that that's this piece here. It is. So there's a little tag here that holds the spool in, and if you don't pull that tag out, it's not on all of them, but it's on some of them. And that tag goes in this way in orientation when you go put it back in flat side out. But if you don't take that out, you can't get the case off as well. So there we go. So that's popped. Clean inside here, a little bit of dirt and buildup. So let's get that out of the case. I'm just going to use a paper towel to do that. And then this is a nice clean looking reel, very efficient. It doesn't look like it's been used much, and yet the reel is probably 15 years old. So with that, we're going to just grab the pieces, take them off, and put that back in the case there. Take them off, make sure they're clean, re-lube it, and put it back into service. So first off then is the pieces on the stack. We have two tension washers. They're cupped, they're not flat washers. This is the way they came off, so I'm going to put them back in. And those tension washers are for the sensitivity on the star adjuster. We then have this rubber sleeve. This rubber sleeve is symmetrical, doesn't matter which side goes up or back. And just put those two on that sleeve and into my box. Then I can take the main gear off. It doesn't look like this probably has had any work on it. It doesn't have any usage on it really. And then notice the orientation of the anti-reverse dog. The anti-reverse dog has got a pressure feeler. It's a V-clip. And take that off. And that V-clip rides on the notched gear and sits like that. This is also the trip lever for the free spool release. This is the free spool release. When this comes down, that it'll sit in a notch, and that notch will trip the reel. Okay, I'm going to just remove the gear stack then. Just clean up the bottom. There's not much here to do. Now these are hard washers. You don't need to lube these hard drag washers. You can if you like, but for the most part these have a little bit of oil on them, and that's plenty for what's going on here at the moment. And just trying to find the blade. That last one is always a little tough. What I'm doing now is just making sure it's clean. That's the key. So the washer set goes main gear, then it's a fabric washer, or in this case a hard washer, round washer, another drag washer, the eared washer. Sometimes you got to watch. If it's a Shimano reel, for example, it may have a bent tab on it going down. You just want to make a note of that if that was the way it came out. Cap washers and so on, and then we have one inside here. So that's the stack. We can put them right back. Just so we remember the orientation to them. We'll put them back on the stack once I clear the free spool release side of this. But for now, I'm just going to put the orientation back into the stack into the piece. Okay, this simply lifts off. It's got balance to it, but it simply lifts off. It's got two little pressure clips that hold down on the yoke. The yoke, from time to time, folks get wrong. The yoke sits up with the gear exposed below. Sometimes that's when you don't take your pictures. The spool side of the gear goes into the shaft here, and the teeth side is what meshes with the main gear. And then on this assembly, it's pretty straightforward. There's a series of two. This is the trip lever. I'm taking that off because we have some grease on there. Then we have an arm. That arm just simply sits over the stud. Again, I'll just clean out the old grease behind. And then we have one more lever here that goes up and down. And then this floats. This is always a little bit of a problem for some folks, and they're trying to figure out which way this assembly goes. But it floats, and then the case is going to hold this tight. There's a slot in the case here. That slot is going to hold it tight for operating purposes. Okay, I'm going to grab a brush. I'm going to put a little bit of blue grease on here just to help everything slide nicely. You don't want to put too much, because if it becomes dirty, it'll have the opposite effect. It'll actually clog the assembly rather than making it flow nicely. So just a little bit, just like that. Okay, so once you've lubed up the assembly and reinstalled the trip bar, I like to pull that out of the way, grab the assembly here, make sure that it's greased. And then we can put that assembly back on over those posts. And then we can take the carrier, which is going to provide the tension for the free spool release, reinstall that. And it looks good. And then when we put the case on, that will take care of this flop here. Next up then is the anti-reverse dog and ratchet. So we're going to go set that dog. There's just that little V goes over, and we come down on top of the spool and we set that dog onto the post. Make sure that it sets properly, and you can see how the dog, when engaged, is going to sit inside here. So, okay, next up, main gear. Make sure that that seats properly, which it does. And then we have that series that we were talking about before. We have a hard washer. We have the metal round washer next. We have the second hard washer. We have the eared washer. That fits in the groove. Make sure it gets in that groove. Looks like I just knocked that anti-reverse dog off. We'll do that back in a moment. And then we'll put that main one on top, and then we can go reseat the anti-reverse dog underneath here. Bring that back onto the pin. It's a friction anti-reverse dog. It's very common. Oops. I keep popping it when I turn the main gear. Shouldn't be doing that. Alright, we're back there. And the case is going to hold that when we put that case back on. So let's go do that right now. That's all that's left on the outside here. I'm going to go grab the case. It's clean inside. We've got grease on the spool gear. We can put a little bit of grease onto the main gear here just to make sure that the teeth are adequately lubricated. And go grab the main case now. Put that case back on. Grab the two case screws. Then we can turn our attention to the stack that goes on to the drags. And we can close the reel up and go to the other side and do the servicing back there. As you saw from the way that this reel is designed, there's no access to the spool on the gear side, so that has to be done through the other side of the reel. Okay, next up is just tightening down the case. You want to make sure that gets set in the groove there. And I'm just going to grab that little, this is the tension piece that holds that end of the spool. That goes in with the pointy side inside. And then we have the tension cap. And then we can work on the, I'm not sure I have that, there we go. Then we got the little barrel piece goes on next. One of the tension washers, and again these were opposing, so I'm going to grab those from both sides. That'll give us the tension. Next up would be the star adjuster. So the Ambassador series has been around a long time, and a lot of different versions, but internally they're pretty much the same. You'll find that they didn't change the internal design too much. So this happens a lot because there's nothing holding that gear sleeve on. Just grab a needle nose pliers or something to hold the shaft while you get it started here. And then once you run out from the top, you can generally work it from the bottom, or vice versa, depending on what you want to call top and bottom. There we go. And we got it. And once it pokes through enough, you can actually use your handle to hold it down. Just remember, if you're using your handle to hold it down, don't forget that you have a tension washer in there before you close this up. Alright, we're back to this. That works well. Pretty much a lot of adjusting room on this one. Wow. Alright, that could take a day. Still going. Okay, we have a tension ring. Now we can put the handle back on and do the rest. Give it a turn, make sure it's working the way it should. It's probably got a little bit too much tension on the side cap here. There we go, nice working reel. Alright, back up with the nut then. A lot of folks like these. This is an international reel. It's not just sold in the US or otherwise. And a lot of opinion about whether the new one's made in China or anywhere near the quality of this. And all I can say is that some of the components on the Chinese reels have changed. And I see things breaking there, or things of lesser quality that I don't see on the old reels. But that's just me. It may be other folks have different experiences there. So I'm not going to say that it's a truism, but I can say I certainly have noticed the difference. Okay, back to the nut cap. Back to the set screw. And then let's just go over and service the bearing on the other side. Let's give it a spin first, make sure it's doing what it should be doing, which it is. Free spool. Release. I'm going to back the pawl assembly over to this side so I can put a drop of oil in there. And then we'll work our way over to the side cap. So you don't have to pull a pawl out here. You could if you wanted to check it. This one seems to be operating fine. Just a drop of oil. Keep that moving. I also put some oil on the worm gear, like I just done there. Some folks like to put grease on that worm gear. I guess the thought there is, depends on where you're fishing, but if you're in a surf environment, if you're in the ocean, if you're in places where you're going to get a lot of spray or dust or the like, I generally like the oil versus the grease, because I put some oil on the handles as well. I find that the grease traps the dirt. There you go, and I quieted that guy right down, right? All right, over here to this side then, pull those 3 side plate screws. These are different, so again, lay them out on the desk so that you know which ones go where. And I'm just noticing that this one's got a bigger sized screw head than the other two, so I'm going to assume that that's a different one. May just be a replacement screw, don't know, but it doesn't hurt to notice where these things came from and put them back where they were. This is a larger screw here because it's mounting the crossbar in the back there. And then all we want to do here is check the teeth on the drive gear. I'm going to put that one up top there. It looks like they're the same, just looks like maybe that's a different head. I want to just make sure that I put some lubrication into here. Doesn't appear to be a bearing, so I'm just going to go ahead and put some grease in there. Also going to check the teeth on the idler gear or transition gear. These all seem to be doing well. Put a little bit of grease on both. You don't have to get every tooth, because as this thing runs around, it will spread the grease. And then we have the drive gear on the spool. You don't have to put grease on the clicker, and the drive gear on the worm. So we're good to go. Just close this up. The orientation here is that the decal goes down, so generally you can get this pretty close. And you may have to turn the reel to mesh the gears. Just did. Then I just laid these out. Again, I usually use a parts tray, but I knew I was just doing 3 screws and that I wasn't going to do any wrestling with this reel, so we're in better shape here. There's one. There's the second one below. And then that little slightly bigger screw head, but it looks like the threading and everything is the same, so maybe it's a replacement screw, or maybe it's just an oddball, I don't know. But most of the time you see a difference like that, there is a difference. So, put that one back in the 3rd slot here, which is towards the cross post there. And this one's coming back at John, so this one's a nice reel as well. Alright, take it for a ride. Oh, that's smooth now. You don't have the noise from the handle. The pawl assembly is definitely working a little bit easier. Nice spin on the reel from a casting perspective. Right tension on the spool tensioner there. Tighten down the drag washers just to make sure we got the drags. We do, and I'm going to back that drag off. There's no sense pressing down drags if you're not using a reel, so back it off when you're not using it, or particularly if you're storing it over the winter time. And this one's ready to go fishing. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please like it. I'm always looking for subscribers. Please subscribe if you enjoy watching these types of videos. There'll be more to come. And I thank you for watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.